You join me for the second part of Double Agent. It's strange to think he'll grow up speaking French, with a dad who's a fisherman, better a fisherman than a spy. Secret agents don't retire. Some are killed in action, some leave the field and end up behind a desk, providing support for men and women who've taken their place. Even when they leave the service, they're still watched, just in case they decide to sell their secrets or go into business for themselves. John Ryder was different. He'd recently completed a long and brutal assignment which had culminated in a shootout on the island of Malta, followed by his faked death on the Albert Bridge in London. During that time, he'd inflicted serious damage on Scorpia, the criminal organisation. If Scorpia discovered that he was still alive, they'd make him a primary target. MI6 knew that. They understood that his usefulness was effectively over, and they decided to let him go. Ash came back over to them. He'd got a mobile phone in his hand. The control tower just called, he said. "You're all set for takeoff." "Why didn't you come and stay with us, Ash?" Helen suggested. "You could fly down with Alex. A week in the sun would do you good." Ash tried to smile, but something prevented that. "That's kind of you, Helen. Maybe. We'll keep in touch." John Ryder was examining the other man with a certain unease. The two of them had worked together, but they'd also been friends for many years. "Good luck, Ash." He seemed to be in a hurry to get away, and they shook hands. Then Ash leant forward and kissed Helen once on the cheek, but so lightly she barely felt his lips. And the husband and wife began to walk towards the plane. "What's wrong with him?" Helen asked as soon as they were out of earshot. "I know he's hurt, but he seems distant." "He's been axed." John spoke the words so casually. "He screwed up in Malta and he knows it. Blunt will want him out." "What will happen to him?" "An office job somewhere, a junior outpost." "Does he blame you?" "I don't know, Helen, to be honest. I don't really care. It's not my business anymore." They'd reached the plane. The pilot saw them through the cockpit and raised a hand in greeting. His name was Robert Fleming, and he'd flown with the RAF in the Falklands War. Killing Argentine soldiers, some of them just kids, had changed his mind about active service, and after that he allowed himself to be recruited by MI6. Now he flew all over the world for them. The co-pilot was a man called Blakeway. Both of them were married. There was no cabin crew on this flight. Standing on the terrace outside the terminal, Ash watched John and Helen Ryder climb to the metal staircase that led up to the plane. John stood aside to let Helen go first, gently taking her arm as she pulled the door shut from inside. A couple of ground crew in overalls wheeled the steps away, and the first of the two Anson's propellers began to turn. Ash thought he was going to faint. The pain in his stomach was worse than ever. It was as if the Russian assassin, Yasin Grigorovich, had somehow managed to stab him a second time and was twisting the knife even now. The plane's engines had both started up, and he could barely hear the sound. The sky, the grass, the airport, the Anson. Nothing connected anymore. He could feel beads of sweat on his forehead. They were ice cold. Could he really do this? Was he going to go through with it? He'd been released from hospital after 6 weeks of treatment that had included being given 11 pints of blood. The doctors had told him what he already knew. He would never be the same again. Not completely. There would be too much damage, and the pain would always be with him. He'd need a barrage of drugs to keep it at bay. And they'd been grateful, the people he worked with, the ones who'd caused this to happen, but he still remembered meeting Alan Blunt, the head of MI6 Special Operations, and giving him precisely 5 minutes. His injuries were his own fault. He totally mishandled the operation in Mandia. He disobeyed orders. He was being taken off active duty with immediate effect. Blunt hadn't even asked how he was feeling. Ash had known what he was going to do even before he left Blunt's office. For a moment the pain was forgotten. He felt only anger and disbelief. It was obvious now. They'd always treated him like this. He'd been overlooked and underrated from the start. But he'd got numbers, he'd got contacts. He didn't care what he had to do. He'd show MI6 that they were wrong about him. They'd made a mistake they were going to regret. He made the call as soon as he was in the street, away from the eavesdropping devices that were scattered all over Special Ops HQ. After that, things happened very quickly. That same evening, he met a man in a South London pub. The next day, he was interviewed by length by 2 blank-faced men in an abandoned warehouse near the old meat market at Smithmill in Clerkenwell. Patiently, he repeated everything he'd said the night before. The next call came 2 days later. Ash was given 20 minutes to get across London to the Ritz Hotel and a suite on the 2nd floor. He arrived exactly at the specified time, knowing it had almost certainly been followed the whole way, that it had been arranged like this to prevent him from communicating with anyone else. This was to be no chance of a trap. After he'd been thoroughly searched by the 2 men he'd met before, he was shown into the suite. A woman was waiting for him, sitting on her own in an armchair with perfectly manicured fingernails curving round a flute of champagne. She was strikingly beautiful, with shoulder-length hair. She was wearing a designer dress, a whisper of red silk, diamond earrings, and a single large diamond at her throat. Ash tried not to show any emotion, but he knew this woman. He'd never met her, but he'd seen her file. It was hard to believe that he was in the same room as her. Julia Rothman. According to the file, she was the daughter of a Welsh nationalist who'd married and murdered an elderly property developer for his money. She was on the executive board of Scorpia. Indeed, she was a founder member. "You want to join us?" she said. He heard a hint of Welsh in her voice. She seemed amused. "Yes. What makes you think we'd be interested in you?" "What, if you weren't interested in me, you wouldn't be here." That made her smile. "How do we know I can trust you?" "Mrs. Rothman." Ash wondered if he should have used her name. He spoke slowly. He knew he'd only have one chance. "I spent 4 years with MI6. They've given me nothing. Now I've finished with them. Or perhaps I should say, they've finished with me. How do you know you can trust me? Only time will give you that answer. But I can be useful to you. A double agent. Think about that. If you want someone inside special operations, that can be me." Julia Rothman sipped her champagne, but her eyes never left Ash. "This could be a trick," she said. "Let me prove myself. Of course, anyone who joins Scorpia has to prove themselves to our complete satisfaction, Mr. Howell, but I'm warning you, this task might not be an easy one. I'm ready for anything." "Would you kill for us?" "I've killed before," Ash shrugged. "Before it was my duty for king and country. This time it would be murder. I've already explained. I would do what I have to join Scorpia." "We'll see." She set the glass down, then produced a white envelope and she slid it towards him. "There is a man inside this envelope," she said. "It is the name of a man who has done us a great deal of harm. Killing him will prove beyond all doubt that you mean what you say. But a warning, once you open that envelope, you have confirmed that you have committed yourself. You cannot change your mind. If you do so, you'll be dead before you leave the building." "I understand." Ash was uneasy. He picked up the envelope and held it in front of him. "We'll provide the manner of his death," Mrs. Rothman went on. "And when he is dead, you'll be paid £1,000. It will be the first payment of many. Over the years, if you stay true to us with Scorpia, you will be very rich." "Thank you." Suddenly Ash's mouth was dry. The envelope was still balanced on his fingertips. "So are you going to open it?" He made his decision. He ripped the envelope open, and there was the name in front of him, black letters on a white envelope. Julia Rothman looked at him quizzically. So they knew. That was the first thought. The elaborate trick had played off on Albert Bridge hadn't worked. There'd somehow been a leak. They'd learnt that John Ryder was still alive, and as this test, they knew exactly what they were doing. Ash would have been happy to have killed anyone in the world. He'd have killed Blunt or anyone else in MI6. But Scorpia had gone one better. They were asking him to kill his best friend. "John Ryder!" His mouth had gone dry. "But he's... Don't tell us that he's dead. We know he is not. But you, why? You said you didn't care what you did. This is your assignment. If you want to prove yourself, this is what you have to do." But could he do it? He asked himself again now, watching the ancient plane as it completed the final checks before takeoff. The propellers were buzzing loudly. The whole fuselage was vibrating. It wasn't just John. It was Helen too. He'd once loved her, or thought he had. She'd rejected him, but John had always stood by him. Now that wasn't true. Blunt axed him and John had done nothing to help. The plane jerked forward and began to rumble down the runway, picking up speed. The bomb was on board. Ash had got no idea how Scorpia had got it on there, or even if they found out about the flight in the first place. Such details didn't matter. What mattered was that they were there. The bomb could have had a timer. They could have transmitted the signal themselves, but they turned this into the ultimate test. If he did this, there'd be no going back. He'd be theirs for life. "We will provide the manner of his death, but you will be the one that pulls the trigger." He couldn't do it. They were his closest friends. He had to do it. John and Helen were dead anyway, and Scorpia would kill him if he failed. The plane was halfway down the runway. Slowly it rose in the air. Ash took out his mobile phone and pressed a 3-digit number, followed by send. The explosion was huge, much bigger than he'd expected, and for a moment the plane disappeared completely, replaced by a scarlet fireball that hovered 15 metres above the runway. There were no wings, no propellers, no wheels, only flames. And then, like some hideous firework, broken pieces of glass, and the plane was gone. There was nothing left. The people inside would have died instantly. Already alarms were sounding. Enderby and half a dozen men were running towards the wreckage, coming from every direction, as if there was anything they could do. Black smoke billowed into the sky. Ash turned away and walked back inside. He was sure that Scorpia would be watching. He took a deep breath, tasted smoke and burning aviation fuel. a new life, but how was he going to enjoy it when he was so empty inside? Too late, he'd made the choice. Slowly he's made his way downstairs and out onto the runway, limping towards the flames that for him would never die. Wow, I didn't expect that story. When we've heard so much about Alex Rider and how he was an orphan, I'm not sure I'd ever expected to read the backstory as to how that happened, betrayed by one of their best friends. So that was the second in the 4 Secret Files, the World Book Day special. And still to come, we have got the last story, and it's called Metalhead. So join in to find out what that story is all about.